and welcome to the first episode of the Phillips Sports Podcast. You're on the right channel. You're still subscribed to the right channel. We've gone through a slight rebranding. Phillips is my last name, Jeremy Phillips, as most of you will already know. We've rebranded to the Phillips Sports Podcast. So if you don't see the fifth down, that's why. This is the new name of the channel. We're going to jump right into things on this special late night, Friday night edition of the Phillips Sports Podcast. Starting off with the past NFL week in review. Kansas City downs Buffalo in a pretty good game. Tyler Bass misses a late field goal. However, the Chiefs also still have plenty of time to tie, but they survive a close one. That game, to me, tells me all I really needed to know for the Chiefs going forward, and we'll get to the other parts of it too. But right now, we're starting with that one. That was kind of the hot game, in my opinion, coming out of the weekend. That was the much ballyhooed game. In my opinion, I think the Chiefs, even though the score didn't represent it, I think they were in control for a lot of that game. Even though they let Buffalo run a lot, I do think that was the game plan. Obviously not being a defensive coach, but I think they were perfectly fine giving up the run so they don't hit Diggs over the top and they don't get into a wild shootout. Wind played a factor in that game too, but Mahomes wins his first game on the road in the playoffs. Not counting Super Bowls, those are for the most part considered neutral sites. I know the Tampa Bay one kind of notwithstanding. As well as the LA Rams one also. As we kind of look at that and review kind of some dominoes that I thought were going to fall didn't. McDermott, as of this moment, looks like he's going to keep his job. They're going to run everything back with McDermott again. I personally think that's a mistake. I think McDermott, for some of the older fans watching, older in age-wise, that is, I really feel like he is this modern day's Marty Schottenheimer to a point. For those who don't know, it kind of does also tie in with the Chiefs. There was a phrase called Marty Ball, which it was pretty much Marty Ball got you to the playoffs, but got you out of the playoffs. He was known for having really good regular seasons, and then in the postseason, for one way or another, just never really getting the job done pretty much anywhere he went. And I kind of think that Sean McDermott, personally, I really do think Buffalo needed to move on from him. I think it's wearing out the welcome. They can't get past anybody. I mean, yes, they've beaten Mason Rudolph and Skylar Thompson. They haven't really beat anybody. He beat Lamar that one year, but if I recall right, that's kind of before he really took off, and it was kind of a weird playoff game. If I remember, he got a concussion in the third quarter, so he never had a chance really. I think he did still play somewhat in that game, but when you get a concussion in that third quarter, that Buffalo won Ravens playoff game a couple years ago, there's not really a signature, in my opinion, win for the Buffalo Bills. Their best win in the past couple years might just be one of the times they beat the Chiefs in the regular season. I mean, that's their rival and they can beat them in the regular season, but come playoffs, I just don't really see what Buffalo has now. I think they're at risk of getting real old real quick, player age-wise. Diggs may try to get up out of there, or they may voluntarily send him away. That was a big story coming into the year, was their relationship, and I don't think it's really helped with the offensive coordinator. Like I said, I think Sean McDermott is a really good, like for example, a Carolina Panthers, who by the way did just announce, I believe a day ago or earlier this morning, yeah, I believe it was yesterday, that they were taking the Tampa Bay offensive coordinator as their head coach. I think a role like that, or maybe like Atlanta, somewhere where they need somebody that can, start off on a foot, build a culture. I mean, that's what McDermott did. Obviously, he won before Josh Allen with Tyrod Taylor. But yeah, another Bills season done. Um, like I said, looking at the Chiefs side, they advanced to the AFC title game to face the Ravens. That's happening on Sunday, as we record Friday night right now. Just going live to all of you. We're kind of sitting here looking at how everything shapes up. The Ravens pretty much, not pretty much, they dominate and defeat the Houston Texans. Houston, kind of a crazy stat. They never had a play within the Ravens' 25-yard line, which is wild. Even they got to 10 points, obviously, off of I believe it was a punt return for a touchdown. Going into halftime, it was kind of tight, but Lamar reportedly had a very fiery halftime speech, and they come out rocking and rolling, and they really put the roll, and they rock Houston right out of the playoffs. Houston was a very good story. I think they've got really good pieces. I think they get their wide receiver back next year. Hopefully another good draft by them. They should be a solid stay in the AFC South to come, so long as injuries don't derail them. I would have liked to have seen this team with both their wide receivers, Nico Collins, I believe Tank Dell, I believe was that other wide receiver. I can't recall off the top of my head, but he got injured, I believe, towards the end of the season, and I feel like they kind of lost a little bit of that punch. But still a great one. Win that first playoff game against the Browns. Like I said, hats off. I think I believe DeMeco Ryans is a Houston Texans head coach. I believe he should get a Coach of the Year nod personally. Really to turn that team around from from the number 2 overall pick to divisional round, and playing a really tough half of football against what many people believe is the NFL's best team. But I see nothing but kind of good things in the future, so long as things kind of hold how they are. Tennessee's rebuilding. We really don't know what we have in Indianapolis with Anthony Richardson, because he obviously got hurt super early into the season before this podcast started. And then, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, who knows how the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to go. One minute we think they're going to be great, and all of a sudden they're falling apart coming down the backstretch of the season, pretty much blowing that division. But on the Ravens side of things, they pretty much almost did what they needed to do. Got in and out of Houston, even though it was at home. They get by the Texans comfortably, pretty much avoid most major injury scares. Everything was, for the most part, okay. And they now will host Patrick Mahomes of the Kansas City Chiefs in the AFC Conference Championship game. And as we look ahead to that matchup, the Chiefs are 4-point underdogs. Just a reminder, you get 3 points for being at home in most cases. So the Vegas odds maker is really seeing it as on a neutral side, 1 point probably either way. I think it'll be a good game. We'll kind of get it out of the way because we're going to speed things up along. The brains behind this operation, technically wise, my friend Mr. Gabe. He sits behind the computer. He ain't been doing too well, so give him your best wishes. He helps make this podcast run on the technical side. I know probably people watching me hope he gets well soon and all that other stuff. So we're going to kind of abbreviate this kind of for his sake a little bit health-wise. But I'd take the Chiefs -4. Spread-wise, I mean, why not? You're getting Patrick Mahomes getting more than a field goal. You should take the points at the bare minimum. I think the Chiefs win outright. I think that defense can get after Lamar well enough and the corners hold up. Zay Flowers is a sensational rookie, but Trent McDuffie or Snead or whoever they put on him should be able to keep up with him, as well as not Travis Kelce, my apologies, that's the other side of the ball. Mark Andrews, big news, will be in this game, but I really don't know how much of an impact he will have. If they'll use him kind of as a decoy and as a threat, kind of poke the waters, but maybe not try, unless they kind of really start to get desperate, use him as much. Hopefully they can kind of ease him back in. The Ravens' mindset is ease him back in, get by the Chiefs, get Andrews just close to 100% healthy for the Super Bowl, because obviously you have 2 weeks between conference championship and Super Bowl. On the Chiefs side of things, they're going to be without their offensive guard, Joe Thuney. All-Pro offensive lineman, a very good player. The Chiefs are hoping the backup obviously will be able to sustain well enough. And I think with the run game and how they block, this isn't Andy Reid's first rodeo. This isn't Patrick Mahomes' first rodeo with kind of a makeshifty offensive line. Even though I don't think it'll be as makeshift, but they know that's kind of the thing in my opinion. I think this is kind of being maybe a little bit overplayed. Obviously, the Chiefs also know that guard's going to be gone, so they'll probably shift blocking schemes. They'll maybe slide a little bit more protection on that side, depending on how the Ravens' defensive line matches up. They even may have to keep Pacheco and Allaire kind of in there to help chip block on that side with off on sidecar position with Mahomes. But I think the Chiefs' offense, even though they've played a couple of bad secondaries, I mean those defenses still got played, but it kind of doesn't matter in my opinion. They played bad defenses because it's kind of the way I looked at it was they so long as you get rolling, it doesn't matter how something gets rolling downhill. Once you kind of get that speed, it really doesn't matter how that roll started. So I think the offense is going to be on a roll. They're going to feel themselves. Marquez Valdez-Scantling got a lot of confidence. I know the Ravens have some outstanding linebackers. The corners are a little bit weak on the prevailing theory on how best to beat the Ravens is hopefully your front can block it well enough to take advantage of the cornerbacks, even though I believe the Ravens are getting one of their cornerbacks back that was injured during the season. So you have to kind of keep an eye on that. But like I said, I'm picking the Chiefs outright to win 27-20. I know that's probably kind of a wild thing, but I just think the Chiefs are good enough, and the Ravens are kind of a sneaky, aggressive team. If Lamar thinks he's feeling it, he wants to go for it. Harbaugh kind of gives him that leash to say, go for it, try to ice a game, try to keep momentum with him. And we saw in the Chiefs-Buffalo game that backfires. Everything kind of swings the other way. Because when I look at these two teams, I want to look at them kind of side by side real quick. You got defense is a wash, both great defenses. Skill position, now that Mark Andrews is back, I consider that a wash. Running backs, Pacheco's good, but it feels like you could put almost anybody in the Ravens backfield, and they're getting at least 4.5, 5 yards a pop. They've been able to keep that up. Head coaching, I give a slight advantage to Kansas City. Harbaugh's nothing to sneeze at head coach wise. So I think it really does come down to the quarterbacks, and I have to give the nod to Mahomes. I think Lamar can really cement himself if he does win, though. Lamar wins, even though I don't believe in him. I believe if he wins this game, though, proves me wrong, he can really lay a very solid claim to that number 2 quarterback in the NFL, at the very least the AFC. So that's going to wrap up this side of the AFC side. We're going to go ahead and shift over to the NFC side of things. Detroit Lions survive a really good game against Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Baker Mayfield. Baker throws a pick on the last drive, kind of really just trying to force it. Tampa came in with a bold move of just leaving Adrian Hutchinson and a couple other people on a slot blitz unblocked. It was a bold move, and Cotton, it did not pay off. But Lions moved the ball for the most part fairly well as needed. But credit to the Bucs and Baker Mayfield, they kept up with them. They made it very interesting. Obviously, there was a chance late for them to go and tie the game. I think one of my biggest takeaways is, and this is going to be a hot take. I know, hot take, just saying stuff I do believe Todd Bowles, this should be his last season with the Tampa Bay as a head coach. I think he's a little outdated. I think you got to get some new people in there. I kind of wish Tampa Bay would kind of let him go this year, or kind of promote him like they did Arians or something out of the way. Try to get somebody new in there now that you've lost your offensive coordinator, who I believe he had almost probably 100% say in the offense. And I just don't think Todd Bowles is that great situationally. I know technically he's won. He is a Super Bowl champion, but that, let's be real, that was more Bruce Arians, kind of Tom Brady in there. For that part, I just do not really believe in Bowles as a defensive mind. He's great. Head coach, I really don't think his mindset and how he calls the game as head coaching wise and some of the things he does. You know, I hate to call for somebody to be fired, but I just, for the Bucks moving forward, I think they should have ripped the Band-Aid off sooner. Obviously, they won't, but Baker Mayfield also has played himself into a really interesting position. Next week, I'm going to have a whole list, kind of teaching you guys for next week. I'm going to have me a list. We're going to talk about it because obviously we'll recap the title games. Then we're going to have kind of not only a dead week, but we have that bye week before the week of the Super Bowl. So next week's podcast is probably going to be dedicated to some of the more off topics. We're going to cover coaching. Obviously, Harbaugh gets hired. We're also going to cover where I think maybe Baker Mayfield may land. I don't think he's a lock to come back now that he's lost his offensive coordinator. But next week we'll go into a lot of those other topics, kind of catch everybody up going in to the big game. But Lions advance. The Niners survive a very feisty Green Bay team. The rain really bothered Purdy. Love, for the most part, thrived. He threw that really, head-scratching interception at the end of the game that kind of, I think, justifiably needs to kind of slow everybody's roll on Love. It kind of felt like at the very end of that game he might have got a little high on his own supply. Just trying a horrible comeback across the body throw like that when he really didn't need to. It wasn't a do or die. Because it's one thing if it's 4th and forever, last gaps, okay. That's kind of, it is what it is. But he had another down. He chose to kind of just... It was just a bad throw, bad idea. It was a bad idea from the jump. But the interception kind of, I think, saves Purdy's maybe career in San Francisco. He did not look great. And San Francisco does not play in a dome. I believe the weather, by the way, for the NFC title game should be mostly okay, so he won't have to worry about that. But I think that's something San Francisco will kind of have to look at going forward also, is how does he, obviously not every stadium's in a dome, but if they ever have to go on the road, kind of like a Mahomes, when Mahomes we know could play in bad weather. Purdy, not so much. Anytime there's kind of some rain or some bad weather, he nosedives. We killed Tua for that, but Purdy, I think, kind of right now getting it passed by some people in the media-wise. But like I said, the Niners, they were able to keep up on offense without Deebo Samuel. Defense did just enough. They get by. They host the Detroit Lions. My apologies. As we kind of look ahead into that game, I'm going to give you my prediction on that right out the gate. I'm going to take, betting-wise, 100%. Right now it's at 7.5. Detroit is the underdog. That is a very large line for a San Francisco team that I think is going to struggle to keep up with Goff unless they can get pressure on them. I'm going to take the Lions at the very worst to cover 7.5. But I'm going to pick them outright. I'm going to take the Lions over the San Francisco 49ers 33-30 in a thrilling game. I'm going to have, obviously, so for those following this whole podcast, we're going to have a Lions-Chiefs Super Bowl. Lions' first ever Super Bowl appearance in the history of the franchise. So I don't trust Purdy. That's what it boils down to. I don't trust him. I don't have any reason to trust him. I know everybody goes gaga over everything, but he's got the Avengers behind him. He's got Christian McCaffrey, who everybody had agreed to. It kind of felt like till he got traded to San Francisco. It's like, but Christian McCaffrey is trying to make his case to be a Hall of Fame running back, in my opinion. If he can have a couple of more good years like this, it might be able to show kind of, the Barry Sanders, the Calvin Johnson thing. Like, these amazing, great players just stuck in horrible situations. But I think Detroit will be able to run the ball fairly efficiently and surprisingly, and they'll be able to kind of shorten that game up, maybe kind of make Purdy sweat, make Shanahan kind of get a little bit tight. I think you'll be able to feel the tension in that game as it's going on, because I can see Detroit jumping out to a 7 or 6 point lead, and then maybe the Lions start marching again, try to add to that, and you could probably just feel. I really do think you'll be able to feel that building just kind of tense up more and more as things go along. But I'm gonna take the parlay on this. Take Chiefs and Lions parlay. $50 wins you almost $500. I'll be putting that in here shortly, and that's kind of what we're looking at right now. I really do think that the better teams is Kansas City and Detroit, but between the home field advantages, how the teams have looked, blowing people out, the Chiefs have a lot of experience dealing with Lamar, and so they're not going to be surprised by anything he does. I think that's what a lot of people get caught up in on that, kind of circling back again, is how these teams that play him the first time, they have no idea how to handle him, and he catches them all with their pants down. But I think looking at, opposed to that on the NFC side, I think the Lions have too many good wide receivers, have great running backs. Laporta, another week healthier. I don't think San Francisco's defense, even though it's pretty stout, I think that's just one too many. And Green Bay was getting fairly open on them, so they may be Detroit, Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, and crew should be able to kind of look at that tape, kind of see what worked, what didn't work, maybe adjust a little bit, because obviously San Francisco's going to adjust. But like I said, that's kind of where I'm going to sit. Lions, Chiefs. We're going to come back next week, see where I'm right and see where I'm wrong on that. We're going to have a couple of minutes just to make note. The Chargers hire Jim Harbaugh. It's an okay move. I mean, to try to get butts in the seats, that's the correct move. I don't see it doing much. I think it's still the Mahomes-Reed division to lose. It really depends who Denver gets as a quarterback. I think the playoffs are going to be fairly nip and tuck again. They were pretty nip and tuck this year, even with all the injuries. I don't see that pairing working. Harbaugh is very hard on quarterbacks, and I don't know how Herbert's going to handle that. He could not handle it well, and that whole thing goes sideways really fast. I mean, obviously, Harbaugh does have something to prove. He wants to go back and win a Super Bowl. Will he win it with the Chargers? I'm just going to be flat honest. No, he's not going to win it with the Chargers. That team is right now too screwed up cap-wise. They are probably 2 years away from being, I would say, divisional to AFC title threatening, and probably 3 years away. Unless somebody just magically breaks out or something happens. I think they're about 3 years away from a Super Bowl. I want to see this team. I want to monitor the offseason moves because they are kind of in some cap trouble. They got some aging players. So I kind of want to monitor some of it. I may change that 3 to maybe a 2 year to try to have them be a Super Bowl contender. This coming year, I really think it's got to be a strip it down to the studs, see what they got, see what they can do, kind of build through the draft. Because that'll be an advantage Harbaugh has. He knows who can and can't play the best teams. He knows, okay, this guy can play, this guy can play. I know this guy actually can't play. He looks like he can, but he can't. We're going to avoid him. He'll be able to help navigate through the waters. Belichick also does not get a head coaching job currently. That's going to be a topic we'll probably delve into next week, but I did want to briefly mention that. The Falcons, it's reported Bill wanted a hefty amount of control. The Falcons weren't willing to cede that. So that's why they go out and they hire Raheem Morris, the Los Angeles Rams defensive coordinator. But some things we're gonna look forward to. We're still working on that Spotify thing. We've wrapped it. We've wrapped up the NFL talk. Like I said, we're kind of trying to speed this up a little bit today and tonight. Um, we're still working on that Spotify. Hit a snag right there, but I'm really hopeful next week or at least the week of the Super Bowl, we're gonna be up on Spotify. We'll upload everything on Spotify, and we'll get rolling on that. Like I said, next week we're gonna look at coaching decisions. We're gonna look at kind of how everything looked, maybe in a retrospective fashion. We're gonna have a review of the title game, see where I'm right, see where I'm wrong. Hopefully, you put the parlay in with me. We all make a little bit of money out of the deal. But like I said, that's kind of where we sit today. That's been tonight's abbreviated version of the Phillips Sports Podcast. I've been your host, Jeremy Phillips, and until next time,